6 Music.
You are now entering parallel universe. And wipe your feet on the way in.
Marc Riley, BBC 6 Music.
Recognisably Radiohead and Airbag, and I am recognisably Marc Riley, and that is recognisably Rob Hughes. Hello, mate.
Hello, mate. How are you?
I'm good, thank you kindly. Yeah, how are you?
Yes, I'm all good.
Excellent. And before we go any further, I mean, we're going to come back to Radiohead a little bit later on, and far be it from me to give Radiohead any advice, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And thinking about it, I was actually in the company of Radiohead, particularly Colin and another mate, and my other mate was giving some advice to Colin about where Radiohead were going wrong, which...
Really? Oh.
But you could tell, right, even listening to that, you could tell that Johnny Greenwood was on a hide into nothing. Artistically, a genius. But that guitar work that he does, it's so intense and so fast, isn't it? That he was always going to end up with repetitive strain injury.
Of course he was.
Now, I was going to say I'm not a doctor, but...
Well, you're not, are you? Well, okay, you are. Yeah. I got that wrong.
But watching him play, you know, that really intense, really fast single note stuff, you think, oh, mate, you're going to do yourself a mischief. And of course, he did eventually.
Yeah, he did.
Be careful, Johnny.
Yeah, you did see it coming, lower Well, he wore that thing on his lower arm for a while, didn't he?
Yeah, for sure.
Even that didn't help.
Genius.
So we're looking at Melody Maker, 14th of June, 1997. Guinness have used an unusual backing track for their latest TV ad, an old single by lo-fi superstars in the making, Arab Strap. But fans of the wry, dry Scots may have heard one difference. Singer Aidan's vocals were replaced by an actor's. Do you remember this ad?
I don't.
Had horses in it coming out of the ocean in black and white. Do you remember that?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah, of course I do, yeah.
The ad received its debut showing on British TV during the recent screening of Reservoir Dogs. The band later issued this statement. 25% of the first big weekend by Arab Strap has been used in a Guinness commercial. Aidan did vocals, but they couldn't understand what he was saying, as usual, so somebody else is doing it.
Oh, that is very wrong. It's strange, isn't it, how sort of random things get used in adverts, because I remember just sitting there years ago, probably 5 or 6 years ago, and the Seeds Can't Seem to Make Your Mind tipped up on an advert, and you think,
did they? What was that?
How does that happen? And there must have been only one person in Britain playing the Seeds on the radio at that point in time, and it would have been us.
But when you discover a band like the Seeds, though, that's one thing you'd want to get it to the masses, wouldn't you? Let's make it commercial.
Well, it did.
No pun intended. Also in the news, Factory Records has just gone indie again. The label's relationship with London Stroke Polygram, which saved it from financial ruin in 1994, has come to an end. Now Factory maestro Tony Wilson is looking ahead to an uncertain future, saying we might not be here in 5 months. With the only sort of real... There's an album by the Space Monkeys, so that was, he was putting all his eggs in one basket at that point. It was on a hide into nothing. Obviously, Factory had had their day, hadn't they? And in 97, the year we're talking about here, the Hacienda itself was demolished, but turned into apartments, wasn't it? As they are now.
Yeah, well, it used to be a boat showroom, didn't it?
It did, in the pre-Hacienda days, club days. Ronnie Lane, who's died at home in Colorado after a 20-year battle with multiple sclerosis. He was just 51, which is no age, is it? But he achieved so much in his lifetime. I just want to mention that having interviewed Kenny Jones and Ian McLagan at various points, they both said how Ronnie Lane was the soul of the Faces, and as soon as he left, that was it, really. Because obviously he went off to do his sort of folk carnival thing, didn't he, in the early 70s?
Yeah, he set off around the UK on a horse and cart, wasn't it?
Was a brilliant idea. Yeah. This kind of, travelling sort of, like a folk carnival, old-time sort of gypsy folk carnival show, But it cost a fortune because it was like a circus tent every night.
There probably wasn't a massive market for it.
Probably not.
Yeah. But he did what he wanted. Fair play.
Also in the news, Scarfo met with a few unusual requests when they recently played shows at 2 young offenders institutions, but they were unable to oblige when one inmate asked them to help him escape. The band performed to 150 prisoners at Thorncross near Warrington. The next day they played at Prescoed in South Wales to a mainly older audience. He says, the singer Jamie Hint says, one kid was trying to get us to smuggle him out in the van. People were telling us that the guards normally bring in gospel singers to try to convert them, so it's just good to have a proper band in there. We thought they were going to stitch us up.
Well, of course, we had Jamie in session once.
Oh, did you?
Well, the Kills.
Oh, of course.
He was 50% of the Kills, and then, of course, I got married to Kate Moss and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Neil Young has been forced to cancel his planned European tour, including a Glastonbury appearance due to a bizarre sandwich-making accident. Less than a fortnight night before the tour was due to start, Young cut open the tip of his left index finger while making himself a ham sandwich.
It's a jungle out there.
When he tried to play guitar the following day, he found the finger too painful. In his official statement about cancelling the tour, Young said he would have eaten his sandwich in one piece if I'd known that cutting it in half would jeopardise the tour. Well, easy in hindsight, isn't it?
Absolutely, mate.
On the gossip page also, Melody Maker says that the drummer out of Tindersticks bought himself a great big motorbike recently, then put the wrong petrol in, causing it to blow up. I did that once, I don't mind admitting on there. It was a long time ago. Not in a bike, but in a van. I put diesel in a van that took unleaded.
I thought you meant that you put the wrong fuel in the Tindersticks drummer's motorbike.
No, I didn't, Mark. That's a separate story.
No.
One of the big things going on is the return of rock here. So there's a piece here by Ben Myers, who's since turned into a brilliant author.
Yeah, hi, Ben.
Yeah. Talking about, in fact, it's 1997, and you've got Ash, Foo Fighters, Symposium, Three Colours Red, Metallica, Manic, Skunk Anansie, and Reef releasing records. Prodigy says they're about to release the best rock album of the decade, which, coupled with their live shows, make them the most unlikely yet most fantastic rock stars yet. And they managed it without years of poodle-permed ridicule in the suburbs. Nirvana, it seems, changed everybody's lives forever by mixing long hair and punk rock. Goes on to mention other bands like Silver Sun and Korn and all the rest of it, and how the Reading Festival has changed from what it used to be, you know, a sort of a bit of a hippie hangout, metal hangout, into something a little bit more mainstream.
Well, it was blues originally, wasn't it? It was a blues festival, then a rock festival, and then a really hairy arse builders rock festival, and then it did go kind of grunge, which is when I went, like 92, when Nirvana played and all that, and you get the Screaming Trees and that.
Yeah, absolutely. Can we go to the charts then, because the Boatman's Call is out.
Excellent stuff.
So...
Oh, it's gorgeous.
It is gorgeous. Like, you know, the first time I heard that was on your nighttime show, driving over to Halifax one evening.
Right, okay. Yeah, it's a beautiful thing.
It is. So we'll look at Melody Maker here, 14th of June 1997. There's a great piece on Can here. Nowhere near long enough. It's just a page. So the reason for it is there's Sacrilege, which is the Can remixes album. So they got, you know, I suppose, you know, like proteges. People are influenced by Can bands to just remix tracks and all the rest of it out on Mute Records. So it starts with a quote here by Michael Caroli, the guitarist. He says, Jackie, meaning Jackie Liebsite, was very proud of the fact that purely by musical means he could make somebody vomit. If you can make somebody throw up by playing the drums, that means you're speaking a language that everybody understands, because everybody has to vomit, which makes sense in its own way.
Well, it's setting the bar pretty high there, I think.
Absolutely. So, I mean, that's the opening gambit here, and it doesn't really move away from the bodily functions for a while, but there is a kind of point to all this.
Who wrote it?
It doesn't say, actually.
Not surprised.
Oh, sorry, David Keenan interview.
Okay.
All right. Says the four members of super legendary German band Can are huddled round a table in the corner of their studio in a space just outside Cologne. Holger Suke in stripy pyjama suit and walrus-style tash is the tech head. Jackie, the drummer, sits slightly apart from the rest, staring into the distance. The other two, Ermin Schmidt and Michael Caroli, keyboards and guitar respectively, are manic and animated. Caroli is waving about a drained bottle of vodka, talking about all sorts of stuff like astronomy, Blur, ESP, post-rock. Much of the resurgent interest in Can is down to the name-checking by the likes of Maker regulars Tortoise, Le Bradford and Third Eye Foundation, and plenty more besides.
It makes me laugh that. He says the drummer sits a bit away from everybody else, staring off into the distance. That's every drummer.
Okay, fair enough. Okay. So, anyway, Holger says, we love vomiting audiences. So it goes on like this. So Melody Maker then wants to know, well, what other kind of bodily functions can music kind of make people do? And he says, you know, is a crowd of defecating fanatics something you'd encourage? And then Caroli just gets very thoughtful. He says, well, now you mentioned defecating, he said, the first Roxy Music album made it impossible for me to defecate. I was sitting there, and this never happens to me when I go to the loo, because I know what I'm going to do, but Brian Ferry's inflatable doll made it impossible for me to have a poo. I'm not sure where that was going.
I was going to say pick the bones out of that,
well,
but I'm not sure it's the right phrase to use. But
the name Can suddenly takes on a whole new meaning.
Very good.
All the rest of it. Anyway, talk about influences, because you can trace so much stuff back to the Beatles. And the Can was sort of obviously into the Velvets for a while, obviously non-rock and roll, European music, Stockhausen and all the rest of it. And they talk about where they kind of came from. Holger says, for me, he said, the key piece of music was I Am the Walrus, particularly when they tune into Radio 3 and King Lear starts to drift through the static. That was making so many links across media, and that was something I was increasingly interested in. Caroli says, for me, I could see the link between the Beatles and the stuff Holger was always talking about. Avant-garde composers such as Stockhausen or whoever, but I only played him the Beatles in the first place to try and convince him to form a rock group, which I'd heard before, that story, isn't it?
Right.
Holger says, the Beatles for me were far out and major. When I saw the Sgt. Pepper album cover, I said to myself, that moustache could fit you, and I've had one ever since. So not only inspiring on the music front, just to on the sartorial face furniture front.
And also, Damo Suzuki obviously still goes around to this day doing the improvisation sets.
does.
And a load of the musicians who've played with him up and down the country have been in this room as well.
Yeah.
You know? And I know how it works. It really is that where they just sit down and look at each other and say, well, let's start in E and see where it goes.
Yeah, and he doesn't. I mean, I Zoomed him maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I think, and he doesn't talk about the past. He's not that he's being awkward. He's not interested in it. It's just all about the here and now. So you won't catch him doing any old can tunes.
Right.
New albums. You've got Radiohead's OK Computer out, reviewed by Taylor Parks here. Doesn't give it marks out of 10. It takes forever to actually get into the subject of the album itself, and he argues it's a record for our times, he says, because technology and the internet have fostered a feeling of paranoia and isolation, so that the airless production only serves to heighten the claustrophobia, that sense of being stranded among the pixels. He adds that it doesn't sound like a rock record, it sounds like a facsimile of unwanted feelings on wet weekday afternoons or in the middle of the night.
It's a reinventing rock music album, isn't it?
It is, really.
So I'm not entirely sure against point, but whatever.
Yeah, fine. Also Spiritualised, ladies and gentlemen. Gigs this week, you've got Stereolab at Canterbury Penny Theatre, Mogwai and Arab Strap at the Garage Highbury Corner, Goldblade at the venue in Southport, Spiritualised and Gorky's at the Hacienda in Manchester, Broadcaster at the Flapper and Firkin in Birmingham, the Specials at the venue in Edinburgh, Captain Sensible at Crackers in Gloucester, 808 State at the Fairfield in Croydon. Now, I did want to bring your attention to a David Bowie live review here,
right?
Which is the Earthling tour. So I didn't see this tour. I wish I had seen it, but you saw this on a couple of occasions, I believe.
Yeah, I saw him when I introduced him at the Manchester Academy, and also I went to see it at the Leeds Town and Country Club. And I mean, obviously it was a big moment for me introducing him at the Academy. It was a very small venue for Bowie to be playing anyway, held 2,000 people probably at that point in time. And he came on, I introduced him, he walked past, winked, and then went off to the front and did Quicksand. And it was one of the best times I ever saw Bowie, or two of the best times I ever saw Bowie. And people had been really sniffy, hadn't they, about him. Everybody, like, you know, Chris Evans and a lot of other people queuing up to kind of kick Bowie on the Outside tour.
Yeah,
right,
yeah,
famously,
sure.
which was kind of pretty bleak, really, you would have to say. And the Outside album was a real statement from Bowie. But the Earthling album, I think, is just an absolute classic Bowie album. And you look, I'm Afraid of Americans and Little Wonder and all those kind of songs are just like Bowie up there with his best. I mean, not the creme de la creme, but special stuff.
Yeah, it's something I came to a bit later on, because I say I'd sort of lost a bit of interest. Shames me now in the 90s. But also the 90s, it seemed to be, anyway, judging by this, perhaps this is an example of that, quite fashionable to give Bowie a bit of a kick in, because, you know, it was an artist in a particular era. Taylor Parks here again. He says it's not that Bowie sort of got rid of his talent years ago, it's just that his ability to write a decent tune shriveled a long time ago. Tonight he stands revealed for what he is, what we always knew he was, but we're too busy dancing and pretending to be from space to acknowledge. People will try and tell you that today's David Bowie is wide awake, still searching for the new. Of course, his latest album, Earthling, is no more drum and bass than it is an Apple turnover. And carries on in that vein. Everybody's entitled to an opinion, of course.
Yeah, even when it's wrong.
Absolutely.
But no, I mean, the thing is about that is, I mean, people kind of like ridiculing Bowie because he famously, supposedly, was ringing up Liam from The Prodigy for a lot to try and get him to work with him, because he recognised The Prodigy were a breath of fresh air, which they were, and Liam didn't want to do it, and the story is that he would never return his calls, and again, fair enough. But for me, Bowie nailed it with that album without Liam, so, you know, as you say, each to their own.
I think there's a lot to be said as well for an artist when they're sort of, you know, in their early 20s, say, sort of absorbing whatever's around and sort of regurgitate it, making it their own, to somebody who's perhaps in the, you know, perhaps late 40s, early 50s. It just seems a bit like bandwagon jumping to some people.
And everybody knows that Bowie he picked from here and there, didn't he? He always did, and he always would. And so you look at Iggy and Ziggy and all that kind of stuff, so, and the Velvet, so it's just a pattern emerging that continued with Bowie. But like I say, for my money anyway, Earthling is a corker.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Have we got time for a quick live review of Radar Brothers?
Yeah.
Okay. At the Free Butt in Brighton by Everett True, it says, Radar Brothers, so unassuming, so gentle, level. So damn nice on stage, you feel they shouldn't be capable of creating such sweet, evocative music. They should be helping old ladies into taxis or punching tickets on the pier. Yet somehow their music is infused with such serenity and beauty, it's as if the bustle and confusion of the late 20th century have passed this LA trio straight by altogether, which is a nice way of putting it.
It is. I mean, we had the Radar Brothers live in session again a long time ago, and they kind of always ran on a parallel to Grandaddy to me in a way. They were very kind of similar ilk, weren't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so I think the time is with us where we're going to have to jump ship here.
We are. We're jumping ship to... where are we jumping ship to?
We're going to go to Yola Tango.
Oh, of course we are.
And Sugar Cube. So, yeah, just to say thanks to everybody for listening. Very much appreciated. And we shall see you on Monday night. And, I would imagine Gideon Cole's next. And so, take care. And here is Yola Tango and Sugar Cube.
Marc Riley, BBC Six Music.
And shut the door on your way out.